Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, IOCTA 2020. I hope you can all hear me well. First, before we begin, I would like to say a couple of things. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can ask them in our Q&A section here in Microsoft Teams, and my colleague Krešimir will be answering your questions. Secondly, I have to mention that this webinar is being recorded. First, I'm going to start shortly about INsig2. So INsig2 was established in 2004 with its headquarters in Zagreb. Here in Zagreb, we have 50 highly educated employees, and also our educational and training center is here in Zagreb. Here we can accommodate up to 15 people per classroom, and for our trainings, we also provide equipment, forensic tools, and materials. Besides having the office in Zagreb, we expanded our business in 2018, where we opened office in Indonesia, Jakarta. INsig2 can be divided into two business units. The first is integrated technical security, which covers central database management and surveillance, integration of people, processes, and technologies, and integration of logical and physical security. The second business unit is digital forensics. In the field of digital forensics, we can say that we are a one-stop shop. From the day one, INsig2 has been working with digital evidence and digital forensics. From the very beginning, education was the main activity of the company. We focus on developing and providing a variety of courses that are related to digital forensics and also cybersecurity. We have also independently developed various specialized courses which cover topics ranging from basic concepts and procedures of digital forensics to advanced topics for experienced investigators. Except education, we also conduct forensic investigations. Most of our cases come from law enforcement agencies, but as we know, as things get more digital, we've seen a huge increase in investigations coming from business and private sectors. So actually, we can say that we teach what we do. Besides investigations and education, we also provide support and maintenance as the main representative for digital forensic tools, as well as consulting services for those very tools. Also, INsig2 advises, supports, and conducts investigations in the public sector, like military, government, and police, and the private sector, like corporations and small businesses. And last but not least, we also have extensive experience in designing, equipping, and setting up digital forensic laboratories for various government agencies. So like I said, our main focus in business is education and training in the field of digital forensics and cybersecurity. Our employees are also certified for various forensic tools such as EnCase, Access Data, Celebrite, Oxygen, and many, many more, and also some general ones such as Certified Forensic Computer Examiner. Here on this slide, you can see an example from one of our trainings. It's OLAF. OLAF is held in 2 weeks for 2 sessions, and more than 300 law enforcement officers from around Europe attend it every year. So our training schedule has been very intensive since 2011, and since then we have successfully completed over 500 trainings at over 4 continents and trained over 3,000 law enforcement professionals. As you can see from the map on the slide, we've been to many European countries, but also to USA, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and many, many more countries. Something new that we have since this year, it's our e-learning platform. On our e-learning platform, you can find customized courses which are specifically created for each group of people. So we have different courses for legal entities, for law enforcement, and for private sectors like IT professionals. These courses cover deeper aspects of digital forensics and forensic value of digital evidence while collecting, processing, and presenting digital evidence in the court of law. So as you can see here, we have fundamentals of digital forensics, but also we have intermediate courses which are for already experienced investigators. Besides having strictly digital forensics courses, we have IT security awareness courses. For example, here we have password management, and currently we are working on a couple of more courses which will be available very, very soon. We have worked on a large number of projects. Some of our clients were security agencies such as Interpol and Europol, some IT companies such as Microsoft, but also companies from other sectors like Pfizer and some banks. And we have worked with almost all ministries in the region, like Ministry of Interior of Macedonia, Montenegro, Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Slovenia. Our partners are most of biggest forensic companies like Magnet Forensics, Celebrite, MSAP, Oxygen, Paraband, and many, many more. Okay, now shortly about me. My name is Anja Anđelković. I work in INsig2 as a digital forensics consultant and have a master's degree in information security and digital forensics. My main responsibilities and assignments as a digital forensics consultant are creating materials for education and holding trainings, but currently I'm mostly focused on preparing materials for our courses for e-learning platform. Besides that, I try to focus on Linux forensics and provide support during forensic investigations. Okay, now we can go on to our IOCTA 2020 topic. So by the definition, IOCTA is Europol's flagship strategic product which highlights the dynamic and evolving threats from cybercrime. IOCTA provides a unique law enforcement focused assessment of emerging challenges and key developments in the area of cybercrime. Also, these key recommendations that are included in the report can be very, very useful for end users so that they can be aware of the cyber trends and how to protect themselves from becoming a victim. IOCTA is published annually by Europol's EC3, or European Cybercrime Center, which is Europol's platform for cybercrime investigators across the European Union and beyond to connect, collaborate, and communicate. Data collection for IOCTA 2020 took place during a lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has also greatly affected significant changes and criminal innovations in the field of cybercrime. The analysis for IOCTA 2020 clearly highlights cybercrime as a fundamental feature of European crime. Some known threats like ransomware, business email compromise, and social engineering are constantly evolving and are making these criminal activities more complex to detect and then, of course, investigate. Among them, ransomware in particular remains a key threat faced by investigators across the European Union. Also, a large increase in the amount of child sexual abuse material was observed on the internet. You can watch the full interview on Europol's YouTube channel called Europol Tube, and also you can download the report from their official website. The crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic illustrated how criminals are actively working to exploit the society that is most vulnerable. So criminals have adopted existing forms of cybercrime to actually better suit the nature of the pandemic. They take advantage of the uncertainty of the situation and also the public's need for reliable information. So while the rest of society tried to keep the situation normal, cybercriminals exploited the crisis through social engineering, ransomware, distributing malware, distributing child sexual abuse material, and many other types of cybercrime. So in many cases, COVID-19 has made the existing problems even worse, caused by a significant increase in the number of people that were sent to work from home. This is actually most unfortunately noticeable in the area of sexual abuse and exploitation of children. As in previous years, the amount of such material that was detected online continued to increase, which has been made even worse by the COVID-19 crisis. In addition, live streaming of child sexual abuse has increased and become more popular during this crisis. Also, the recent cases show that production also took place inside the European Union. So actually on this graph here, you can see how COVID-19 affected the development of cybercrime. I remember that Croatia went into lockdown somewhere in the middle of March. I think that most European countries went into lockdown at that time, but you can see how this increased and reached its peak somewhere in the middle, late April, where we were all deeply into lockdown. So IOCTA report was divided into 5 sections, we can say chapters. So I'm going to go through each of these chapters and highlight what was maybe the most important from that chapter. So these chapters are cross-cutting crime facilitators and challenges to criminal investigations, cyber-dependent crime, child sexual exploitation online, payment fraud, and the criminal abuse of the dark web. Our first topic is cross-cutting crime facilitators and challenges to criminal investigations. Key findings here are that social engineering remains a top threat to enable other types of cybercrime, and cryptocurrencies continue to be the main means of payment for various forms of cybercrime. So like I already said, the COVID-19 pandemic also affected the spread of disinformation. People are becoming more and more vulnerable and sensitive to false news and disinformation, and all of that due to the oversaturation of available information that we have. And then all of that combined with the perceived lack of reliable news sources. So we are less and less trusting what media is telling us. And therefore, cybercriminals exploit this for the purpose of creating more effective social engineering and phishing attacks. Well, actually, cybercriminals do it to profit from it one way or the other. The reason may be political, so disinformation is launched to influence political elections or referendums, which of course then affect the whole country. The more common reason is financial gain. So some individuals simply seek to make expressive financial gains through digital ads, such as engaging with fake news about COVID-19, of which there were many. I can say for sure that we had a couple of cases in Croatia. And also a huge increase in new domains and websites related to COVID-19 were noticed actually at the very beginning of the pandemic. The chapter on data compromise highlights the obligation of organizations to report data breaches under the GDPR regulations. So GDPR applies to EU residents, but also applies to all companies outside the European Union that process data from EU residents and organizations. Since the establishment of the GDPR, over 1,600,000 data breaches have been recorded in the past 18 months. These are mainly violations where criminals access, for example, a bank account using the account information that they obtain, maybe through phishing or some other social engineering method. So social engineering and phishing are still key threats, and criminals use them to distribute malware or gain data that will allow them to access some sensitive accounts or systems. So the sophistication of phishing methods is growing year by year. Phishing is becoming increasingly difficult to detect given the amount of phishing emails that are sent daily, and also given the websites that look almost identical to the original ones. It has been observed that criminals maintain a level of awareness of the situation, as evidenced by a series of phishing campaigns that took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the trend of carrying out phishing attacks is increasingly focused on specific selected victims rather than on a random group of people. So they're rather targeting one person and acquiring all the needed information than sending thousands and thousands of emails to random email addresses. So as the main threat relates to so-called spear phishing, criminals have shown their ability to adapt their attacks, for example, by improving language skills or even using some local user agents to communicate with their victims in their language. We know that one indicator is actually poor language skills. That indicates that maybe email that we received is phishing. So for example, if Microsoft is sending you email, there is, I can say, 0% chances that there will be grammar or spelling mistakes. Also, at the same time, poorly placed attacks continue to succeed in exploiting people because they, at the end, attack human weaknesses, which are emotion and trust. So they're relying on that. Accordingly, a key factor in success to protect ourselves from that is raising users' awareness. One case that they described inside the report is Infinity Black hacking group. So Polish and the Swiss law enforcement agencies discovered the hacking group that was going by the name Infinity Black. This group was involved in distributing stolen user data, creating and distributing malware, and also hacking tools. In April this year, the Polish National Police arrested 5 people believed to be members of the Infinity Black group. So police seized electronic equipment, including hardware cryptocurrency wallets, with a total value of about 100,000 euros. A hacker group has created an online platform for selling user data that was called Combos. The main source of income for the hacker group came from stealing and selling data to some smaller hacking groups. Hackers have created a sophisticated script to access a large number of Swiss accounts. And although the losses are estimated at 50,000 euros, the hackers had access to accounts with potential losses of more than 600,000 euros. And hackers, between them were also minors, were discovered when they used stolen data in some stores in Switzerland. Cryptocurrency abuse continues to play an important role in facilitating transactions in all areas of cybercrime. Cryptocurrencies have been, so to speak, set as a default method for payment in ransomware and some other extortion schemes. As well, they're used as payment, like criminal to criminal, on the dark web because they consider them reliable and also because of the perceived degree of anonymity that they provide. According to a recent study that analyzed a subset of 4 million intercepted extortion emails, over 12,500 Bitcoin addresses were extracted, and between them 245 which received one or more payments. The cryptocurrency industry and cryptocurrency exchanges continue to strengthen their KYC measures, or Know Your Customer measures. The number of ATMs for cryptocurrencies is continuously growing, and this year, in 2020, it exceeded 9,000 ATMs worldwide. An increasing number of operators started to require customer identification, and also that suspicious transactions are being marked. As the investigation of cryptocurrencies has become increasingly important for investigators, in October last year, Europol, in cooperation with Centric, launched an educational game for investigators called Cryptopol. Cryptopol is available to all law enforcement agency investigators around the world. Our next topic is cyber-dependent crime. Here we can say that ransomware still remains the most dominant threat, with some novelties about which you will hear soon enough. From the malware category, we can exclude emotet malware, which is a banking Trojan, and he's been highlighted as the top malware in this year's report. And also the threat potential of a DDoS attack is higher than its current impact in the European Union really is. Cybercriminals involved in DDoS attacks, instead of targeting highly profitable targets, have moved to smaller organizations that have weaker security implemented. So as reported in previous IOCTA reports, ransomware remains one of, if not the biggest threats, especially to public and private organizations around the world. The number of ransomware cases has increased significantly in the last 12 months, which has led to a significant increase in the ability of attackers and has had a much greater impact on its victims. So ransomware attackers continue to target public and private sectors of various sizes and also industries, rather than individual PC users. This also allows attackers to increase the amount of ransom demanded and also the likelihood of successfully inducing the victim to pay the ransom. So, as I said, ransomware attackers have introduced a new way of putting pressure on their victims, and that is to pay for their stolen sensitive data under the threat that otherwise that data will be made public. So, if the victim fails to pay the ransom demand, the attacker will publish the victim's sensitive information or sell it to the highest bidder. As an example here, we have a group standing behind Sodinokibi ransomware, who already tried to bid on the data they collected. This approach already marks an escalation of methods to force victims to pay a ransom. Unfortunately, it is expected in the future that other groups will begin to adopt these same measures. And an alternative to publishing data and selling it is their permanent destruction. An example here is NotPetya, which has destructive deletion options that can cause, of course, irreversible damage to the victim. So here on this screenshot, you can see an example of auction. So you can see they placed what is inside the archive. So some files there, how many files is in their database, 3 databases, minimum deposit, starting price, and left time. So they say that whoever wins this, who offers the most money, will be provided with a link from the cloud to get the data. They also highlighted Maze ransomware in the report. Maze is a ransomware first discovered in mid-2019 and was the first ransomware to practice the double extortion strategy. Maze operators opened a dedicated web page where, in addition to encrypting victims' data, they started publishing stolen sensitive information from victims who refused to pay the ransom. An example here is one case that an IT service provider was attacked by Maze ransomware that could be present on the victim's server for months without being noticed. It allows attackers to conduct something like, let's say, scouting by monitoring internal communication to identify a key moment to set up a ransomware. So such as, for example, some sales or large customer meetings or something like that. So some bigger events. So attackers set up ransomware before such events in order to put pressure on their victims. And such a form of attack is actually quite difficult to identify. In the report, they divided ransomware actors into two different groups. One are individuals who use data and services from the dark web and demand ransoms of up to 5,000 euros. Others are well-organized criminal groups with, then again, of course, better technical capabilities, and they target larger companies and organizations with a ransom of up to several millions of euros. One case that they described in the report is criminals targeted a London-based foreign currency exchange Travelex with Sodinokibi ransomware. So in the first weeks of 2020, attackers targeted a London-based Travelex with Sodinokibi ransomware. The company had more than 1,000 stores and 1,000 ATMs in 26 countries. Also, Travelex has been a service provider for several well-known financial institutions internationally. The attack interrupted Travelex services for several weeks, and the attackers encrypted the data and reportedly managed to filter out 5 gigabytes of sensitive data, including personal data, social security numbers, and payment card information. And of course, they said they will publish the data if Travelex does not pay the ransom. The company re-established its business shortly afterwards, but it was reported that Travelex paid $2.3 million ransom to the attacker. Similar as with ransomware, other types of malware have also evolved or become more sophisticated. This is actually best seen in the evolution of Emotet and TrickBot malware. Emotet is the so-called banking Trojan. The group behind Emotet takes long breaks during the summer and then returns very active in the fall. Emotet is actually used to deliver other types of malware, such as Ryuk ransomware and TrickBot. The developers that are behind TrickBot have added a so-called Trick Booster botnet to the malware to increase its spread. This is actually one of the developments that indicate the development of malware and their capabilities. As for malware on mobile devices, this situation is roughly unchanged. Admittedly, as contactless mobile payments are being used more and more, mobile threats such as mobile malware targeting cashless payments have continued to grow. However, due to the limited transaction, which is around 50 euros, and the also effort that is required to be put in that malware, it is still not a tempting type of attack, except perhaps for some smaller amateur attackers. As you can see on the graph here, Emotet is holding the first position. This is on a global scale. So this graph shows the percentage of corporate networks that are impacted by each malware family. On this map here, you can see this is from the website threatmap.checkpoint.com. This screenshot was taken on 11th of November. You can see how many attacks were on this day. Actually, this was taken before 4 p.m., so there were a lot more attacks that day. And also, I put here the statistics for Croatia on that same day. You can see the attack trend for last 30 days. And also you can see different malware types and their percentage of for the affected organizations. So in Croatia at that moment, botnet was leading with 6.2%. But also you can see that mobile and ransomware are having 0%. At that moment, Nepal was the #1 country with the most attacks. You can see the numbers here. So if we compare Croatia and Nepal, Nepal is having a botnet with 26.9%. And also what is horrifying is that ransomware is 16.7%. You can go to this website and check also the statistics for your country. Our next topic is child sexual exploitation online. So the amount of child sexual abuse material on the internet continues to grow, where the crisis caused by the pandemic has further pushed it forward. Offenders are increasingly using encrypted chat applications to share such content and are generally continuously evolving and developing. What has also been observed as a consequence of the pandemic is a sharp increase in live streaming of such inappropriate content. At the same time, it was discovered that the production of such material also took place within the European Union. So the main threats related to the online exploitation of children have remained relatively stable in the past years and throughout 2019. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has moved this slightly forward. There was a sudden large increase in the exchange of child sexual abuse material during contact and travel restrictions, so during the lockdown. And unfortunately, the consequences of this can affect the problem of online exploitation of children in the long run. The increase in such material on the internet also has an impact on the capacity of investigators to monitor and report on such material. Another problem is the increased encryption of many communication channels, which makes it difficult to investigate such crimes. And it is generally known that the sharing of such material through such channels has been going on for a while now. Only now these same channels have become even more protected. One case that they described in the report is international police cooperation leads to the arrest of a dark web child sex abuser in Spain. So with the cooperation of the international police, a sex offender was caught filming explicit videos of a minor boy. They found that the 2015 video found in Belgium and France was actually shot in Spain. By analyzing pictures and videos which are showing the offender abusing a boy who was less than 5 years old at the time, they eventually found the suspect. Investigators noticed that the person in the video was using phrases from Spanish and not some Latin American country. Also, during the analysis, they found that the suspect was registered on several pages dedicated to sexual exploitation of children on the dark web. In the end, they discovered his location in Barcelona and arrested him. Live streaming of child sexual abuse continues to increase, becoming increasingly popular during COVID-19. Due to the quarantine and restrictions on movement, the perpetrators were prevented from physically abusing children. As their opportunities have diminished, so has live streaming greatly increased. In some cases, they use video chats that have a built-in payment system. This is actually a quite difficult area to investigate, as usually no material remains recorded. As number one in LDCA, or live distant child abuse, are still the Philippines. Also, cases of online children material increased in the Philippines during the pandemic. However, this year it was confirmed that it is no longer limited to Southeast Asia, because a major operation in Romania has revealed significant levels of live streaming taking place within the country. Our next topic is payment fraud. SIM swapping has been highlighted as a growing trend. It means it has had a big increase in the last 12 months. BEC, or business email compromise, is still increasing and has become even more sophisticated and more targeted to one person. Also, online investment fraud has been recorded as one of the fastest growing criminal acts, and card not present fraud continues to increase. So SIM swapping is one of the key trends this year, which they wrote about in IOCTA. SIM swapping is a method of taking control over an account and refers to bypassing two-factor authentication in order to access sensitive user data. So criminals replace or transfer the victim's SIM to intercept the one-time password step in the authentication process. So since this usually requires detailed information about the person, this type of attack is highly targeted and represents a major concern and a huge potential danger and risk. A successful attack can lead to gaining complete control over the victim's account, victim's bank account, over his email, or maybe social network. One case study that they described in IOCTA is Operation 512. So in January 2020, investigators from the Spanish National Police, together with the Civil Guard and Europol, targeted suspects across Spain, believed to be part of a hacking ring which stole over 3 million euros in a series of SIM swapping attacks. So the criminal gang from various countries, aging between 22 and 52 years old, struck over 100 times, stealing between 6,000 euros and 137,000 euros from bank accounts of unsuspecting victims per attack. So the criminals managed to obtain the online banking credentials from the victims of the different banks through the use of banking Trojans or other types of malware. Once they had these credentials, the suspects would apply for a duplicate of the SIM cards of the victims, providing fake documents to the mobile service providers. And then with these duplicates in their possession, they would receive the two-factor authentication codes directly to their phones that the bank is sending to confirm the transfers. So the criminals then proceeded to make fraudulent transfers from the victims' accounts to money mule accounts used to hide their traces. At the end, law enforcement arrested 12 individuals across different regions in Spain. Similar to SIM swapping, smishing has seen an increase in the past 12 months. Smishing, or so-called SMS phishing, refers to sending fake text messages that are presumed to come from a trusted sender. In smishing, and their users are usually the target. This is actually a growing problem because people still do not have a developed awareness or skepticism towards potentially fake text messages, while for email they have, because they're constantly warned not to fall prey to suspicious emails. BEC, or business email compromise, is still on the rise. BEC is a type of sophisticated fraud that targets companies and organizations where criminals use social engineering techniques to obtain data to access the email of an employee or CEO for the purpose of initiating fraudulent bank transfers. There are two most common types of BEC scam. The first one is the so-called CEO fraud, where the criminal presents himself as the CEO of the company and requires an urgent bank transfer. The second is the invoice fraud, where criminals falsely present themselves as suppliers and demand legitimate payments to be redirected to a bank account that is under their control. Such scams occur due to a lack of security measures, such as a lack of two-factor authentication, but also a lack of awareness of people about attempted theft through spear phishing or any other form of phishing. This type of attack still originates mainly from Eastern Europe, Nigeria, and other African countries, while the most sophisticated attackers are still from Israel. The number of BEC attacks have also increased during COVID-19 pandemic. The attacks became more sophisticated as attackers began to use more technically advanced measures and what we already mentioned, began to develop their language skills. At the same time, they have increased their focus on smaller companies and not just large corporations. In the future, a large increase in the use of voice biometrics is expected to be seen when it comes to committing various crimes by imitating someone else's voice. It has already been noticed that BEC attackers have begun to use artificial intelligence to mimic the voice. So, for example, imitating the voice of a company CEO. Here in a case study that they described in IOCTA, you will hear about a case where actually someone tried to impersonate CEO. So one partner from a private sector reported a case in which a criminal imitated his CEO during a conference. So the attacker made contact via WhatsApp using a fake invoice and a picture of the CEO, and subsequently sent a fake email on his behalf about the urgent payment of the bill. Fortunately, the scam was stopped at the last minute when the red flag was raised due to the missing purchase order number. Card not present frauds like carding and e-skimming have also increased in the past 12 months. Carding refers to the use of stolen card data for making a purchase. Also, criminals often cheaply buy stolen credit card data from the dark web. At the same time, the compromise of card data through e-skimming has also increased. Criminals group target merchants with weak security measures implemented, and and also affect smaller, they will mostly affect smaller and medium-sized companies rather than larger companies, since they have since they do not have the ability to establish such a sufficient protection. Attackers have made progress in this area too. An example is the malware Pipka. Pipka is the new form of JavaScript that allows criminals to configure which form fields the program will parse and extract. This includes payment account numbers, card expiration information, and the cardholder's name. Also, the feature that Pipka malware has is that it removes a malicious JavaScript component from HTML after being successfully executed. Online investment fraud has been identified as one of the fastest growing crimes in the last 12 months. Many EU member states said that they had witnessed this type of fraud for the first time, and that the losses cost millions and affected thousands of victims across the EU. The online investment fraud works in a way that criminals want to entice their victims to move money into their account using some attractive, quick enrichment schemes. They offer things like cryptocurrencies, diamonds, or gold, and promise victims a huge financial return on their investment. Given the rapid growth of online investment fraud in many European countries, it is expected that this type of fraud will, unfortunately continue to increase and possibly occur in intact countries. The perpetrators generally originate from Russia, Ukraine, and other Eastern European countries. Attacks on ATMs and POS devices have also increased in the EU. Among these attacks, the black box attack stood out as the most popular one. So black boxing involves the installation of an external device that bypasses the need to authorize the card when paying or withdrawing money from the ATM. The installation of a black box requires a minimum of technical knowledge, which then raises even more concern. The criminal groups who carry out these types of attack are mostly from Russian-speaking areas and attack ATMs across Europe. They usually attack older ATM models whose security measures and software have not been updated for some time now. In the last 12 months, also a new type of attack has been noticed that includes malware to check the cache status of ATM before they decide to attack it. And our last topic, which will be rather short because I mentioned problems with the dark web many times through other topics. So our last topic is the criminal abuse of the dark web. So the dark web environment has remained unstable. The lifespan of the dark web marketplace has been shortened, and there is actually no dominant market that has emerged in the last year when we compare it to previous years. There is also a visible increase in the use of cryptocurrencies that have a greater privacy, and also the use of service web and encrypted communication channels for the exchange of goods on the dark web has been observed. So in the last 12 months, the number of large marketplaces on the dark web has decreased, while the number of smaller marketplaces, which can be for specific users or for specific needs, their number has increased. One case study that they described in IOCTA is dark web child abuse. So in early March 2020, Europol successfully completed the demolition of Dark Scandal. Dark Scandal is a website that contained videos of sexual violence, including elements of rape, torture, human trafficking, and child pornography. The site's administrator was a Dutch citizen who reportedly received over $2 million in exchange for selling such content online. And last, we're going to go through dark web threats. So the CoinJoin concept used by privacy-enhanced wallet services has improved the privacy of cryptocurrency services and is therefore considered a major threat. Examples of such wallets are Wasabi and Samurai. In addition to their expected functionality, they also offer some additional features. So, for example, Samurai offers permanent remote deletion or wipe using an SMS command. However, these wallets do not necessarily remove the link between the origin and the destination of the funds, but they do make tracking cryptocurrencies much more difficult. Also, the increased use of hardware cryptocurrency wallets among criminals has been confirmed. As for the cryptocurrencies themselves, initially the dark web markets relied exclusively on Bitcoin. However, this has changed over the last few years. An increasing number of markets also offer alternative options such as Litecoin, Ethereum, Monero, Zcash, and Dash. Although Bitcoin is still the most common option for making payments, an increase in privacy-enhanced cryptocurrencies has been increasingly noticed. Therefore, Monero is gradually becoming the main means of payment in dark web transactions, which is followed by Zcash and Dash. And unfortunately, all of these privacy-enhanced cryptocurrencies pose a bigger problem in investigations. I would like to thank you one more time for joining us today. I really hope you liked the topic, the webinar, and hopefully you learned something new. Once again, thank you all and have a pleasant rest of the evening.